Hey, what's up, guys? Hope you're having a pretty good day. I wanted to show you a couple of really quick little tips here for baseball reference. So, if you go back into the history of baseball simulations, especially if you start reading stuff from the old APBA journal and some of the other publications, the fan made publications about the old days of baseball simulations and baseball replays, what you'll notice is that for a long time there were different discussions about the right way to use players and how to determine what player usage was actually like, and how to do this by yourself, how to create realistic lineups and things. A lot of that has really kind of gone by the wayside over the years. A lot of the games that we play now, especially the computer games, will include real life lineups. And there's this general feeling among baseball fans that the most realistic way to play is with real life lineups. Now, personally, I actually disagree with that. I think that you're much better off using your own lineups. There are some little quirks with real life lineups from time to time that you might find actually distracts you from your project. Not to mention other things such as what do you do with like the 1964 Phillies and their use of pitchers at the end of the season? Do you really want to do what Gene Mauch did, or do you want to try to do something better and win the pennant instead of finishing in second or third place? And so because of that, you might want to consider using lineups that you create yourself. Now, to make this work right, there are kind of a couple of caveats that you need. You really need to have a good source for transactions, and that can be hard to get. Diamond Mine Baseball, especially for seasons that have the deluxe treatment, tends to be the best source for transactions in my experience. There's not really a list of transactions out there, though. Baseball Reference and Retrosheet have some, but they're incomplete, especially for older seasons. And you can do the research on your own. In fact, I've done that, but it takes a lot of time. We're talking like dozens, if not hundreds of hours just looking at old newspapers trying to figure this stuff out. So, you really want to make sure that you have some sort of source of transactions to use beforehand. But if you have that, if you have an idea of which players were played commonly, which ones were not, you can use some of the newer tools on places like Baseball Reference to really help with your decision making. So we're going to look at two different things here today. I have, as you can see, the 1927 Yankees loaded up here on Baseball Reference. Not really a bad place to be. I imagine that many of us from time to time have found ourselves somehow wandering over here to the Yankees and trying to see what's going on. This is the team where most people think that they know by heart what the lineup actually was, and there are a lot of books that have been written about that. And a lot of other mentions in other books about the greatest teams of all time. So we scroll down here to this part here where it says more 1927 Yankees pages. I believe that there is a way to click at something up here as well to get to that if you really want, but whatever. We'll just scroll on down here again. Under the more 1927 Yankees pages section, there are two things that we want to look at especially here. The first thing we'll look at it first, is defensive lineups. So defensive lineups is a really cool feature because it will show you which player started at which position for every single game, including games that ended up tied, like this Thursday, April 14th against Philadelphia, where the game, let's see what happened in this one. The game went 10 innings and ended up being called, I presume, because of darkness. And the final score there was 9-9. You can see here which players were used in the lineup that day as we get rid of this advertisement. And the interesting thing is that with this page at a glance, without doing a lot of research, without opening up a newspaper, without buying the subscription to whatever, without getting all the sporting news and trying to decipher, I mean, the 1927 sporting news is pretty smudgy if you've ever seen it, right? So without trying to work through that, you can just look here and you'll say, wow, something interesting is going on. Look, the catchers were platooned every single day. In fact, that happened for just about the whole season until, I'm guessing, Grabowski either was traded or got injured or something. He probably was injured for a while here. And then they gave Ben Goa time, and Collins would start a couple games in a row. And then Miller Huggins had a lot of this sort of back and forth going on. You can see here at a glance as well if this had anything to do with the handedness of the starting pitcher of the opposing club, and you can see that because of this little hashtag here. So the get out of my face. The little pound sign next to the game score indicates the opposing starter was a left-hander. Holding your mouse, blah 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 blah. Anyway, and so you can take a quick look here and see, oh, well, really Miller Huggins didn't care so much about whether it was a righty or a lefty. What he cared about was trying to get equal time between his two catchers until Grabowski was injured. And then Ben Go, I guess, wasn't quite good enough or something. We had a lot of like two for you, and so on and so forth, which is really, really interesting. In fact, I think most people who are thinking about the 27 Yankees probably have absolutely no idea that that's what happened. You can also look at a glance here and you can see that Babe Ruth didn't play in left field all the time. He started in right field and then went to left, right, left, right, left. And there was a lot of this sort of like indecision as to where to play him in the field. The guy playing on the other side was sometimes Musial or sometimes Durst, and Combs was sort of your center field for the entire season, right? We can tell all of that just by glancing at this. And the other thing that we can tell, which is really interesting, is we can look at the pitchers and we can get the pitching rotations like right away, right? I mean, we can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there were 5 different pitchers in this rotation from the start of the season. And then it went down to 4, as it looks like Pennock was sort of relegated to kind of a spot starter role. And then we experiment again with 5, and then we have 4 and 5 and so on. You don't have to use this to say, I must stick with the original lineup and I must do what they did in real life. Instead, you can use this method and study it a little bit, take a look at it, and you can adjust accordingly. And you can say, oh, look at this Koenig, he must have been out here. You can tell at a glance, he was probably injured there, which is why Tony Lazzeri was playing short for a little while, and then he came back and went back to his position. And Lazzeri, for the most part, was playing at second base, and then for a while was at third base, probably because Dugan was injured, went over to short, and then back to second. And you can do stuff like that. If you really want to know what the transactions were like, that will give you a clue as to what happened to some of the starters. Now, the other thing you can do here that you might not know about already is you can look at the batting orders. And the batting orders will give you not just the offensive starters, but it will also give you the full batting orders for every single game of the season. Now, this is, pretty predictable, right? The Combs, Koenig, Ruth, Gehrig, Musial / Durst or whatever, and then Lazzeri hitting second is pretty much what happened here for the entire season. But again, you can look at a glance and you can see what happened, and you can see what Miller-Huggins did when things were kind of crazy. So this, for example, with Combs in center field, when he wasn't starting, they would put Durst in there and leave him in the number 1 spot, or have Pascal in there also in center field and leave him in the number 1 spot. This is something I've learned looking through a lot of old newspapers and doing little matrices and stuff over the years. This was actually pretty common back in the earlier days of baseball history. Like if somebody couldn't start in the game for whatever reason, his replacement would just take that spot in the lineup, Believe it or not, I mean, there's been a lot of ink spilled and there's been a lot of sort of analysis that's gone into lineup creation over the years. But when you go back to the dead ball era especially, but also as we can see as recently as the 20s, what you really see is a lot of sort of this hole is for this guy in this position in the lineup, and we're not going to change too much of what is going on. You can see that here too at third base. I mean, it's the number 7 spot in the lineup. You have Dugan, Wera, then Gazella, and then back to Dugan again when he was healthy. So lots of stuff you can learn here just from a glance. We're not even talking about making a research paper. We're not talking about jumping deep into this. We're just glancing at this. We're glancing at this for, less than 10 minutes. And we can learn all these things about the 27 Yankees and how to manage the team well and how to get into the lineups. So it's something I just wanted to share with you. I think that there are a lot of people out there who may be familiar with Baseball Reference who might not know about this. And I know that there are a lot of replayers who don't know about this either. It's easier, I know, to use real life lineups, but trust me, this way is more fun. It will get you more engaged with your replay. Hope you're having a good day. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye.